Welcome to the debate from GiltEdge.uk. Before we begin, this content is for informational purposes only and does not constitute financial advice. Always do your own research and consider seeking independent financial advice before making any investment decisions. Your capital is at risk. Today, the optimizer and the challenger go head-to-head on max out your pension before April 5th. £60,000 of tax relief beats any I.S.A. Let's get into it.
You have 15 days until April 5th, and if you haven't maxed out your pension, you're handing money back to the government. At up to 45% tax relief, a pension is the most powerful tax shelter in the UK, full stop.
Powerful, sure, if you don't mind locking your money away until you're 57. Your I.S.A. gives you £20,000 of tax-free growth you can access tomorrow morning. No penalties, no age restrictions, no begging permission from HMRC.
But let's talk actual numbers. A higher-rate taxpayer puts £10,000 into a pension, the government effectively adds back £4,500 in tax relief. Put that same £10,000 in an I.S.A. and you get nothing back. Zero.
You get nothing back because you already paid the tax. With a pension, you haven't avoided the tax, you've deferred it. When you draw it down, 75% of your pot gets taxed as income. That relief was a loan, not a gift.
That assumes you'll be in the same tax bracket in retirement, which almost nobody is. If you're paying 40% now and drawing down at 20% later, you've banked a genuine 20 percentage point gain. That's not a loan, that's arbitrage.
That's a bet on future tax rates staying where they are. And how's that bet been going? The lifetime allowance was scrapped. The annual allowance has yo-yoed from £255,000 down to £40,000 and back up. Pensions are the government's favourite thing to tinker with.
I.S.A. rules can change too, nothing's sacred. But right now, the pension annual allowance is £60,000, and if you haven't used the last 3 years, carry forward could give you up to £180,000 of total contributions. That firepower dwarfs any I.S.A.
Firepower you can't touch for decades. Tell that to someone who needs a house deposit, or who loses their job at 45, or whose kid needs help with university fees. Life doesn't wait until you're 57.
That's what the I.S.A. is for. I'm not saying don't have one. But the question is priority. If you have spare cash in the next 15 days, the pension should come first because the tax relief disappears forever on April 5th. Your I.S.A. allowance resets too, but without the same multiplier effect.
And I'd flip that completely. I.S.A. first, pension second. Fill your accessible, flexible, fully tax-free wrapper before you pour money into something you can't reach for decades.
You're ignoring employer matching. If your employer matches pension contributions, even at 50p on the pound, that's free money on top of the tax relief. No I.S.A. provider is going to match your deposits.
I'll grant you that. Employer match is genuinely free money and you should always take it. But once you've captured the match, every additional pound has to justify being locked away, and most people would be better off with that flexibility.
Fair, but here's one people forget entirely: pensions sit outside your estate for inheritance tax. Your I.S.A.? That's in your estate. With inheritance tax at 40% above the threshold, a pension pot passed to your kids could be worth dramatically more.
Could be, until the next budget. The inheritance tax pension exemption has been under review for years. Rachel Reeves has already signalled changes. Building a strategy around a loophole that's actively being discussed for closure is risky.
Everything's under review. You invest based on the rules that exist today, not the ones that might exist tomorrow. And today, pensions have inheritance tax protection and I.S.A.s don't.
Fine, but let's talk about what happens when you actually try to spend your pension. You take your 25% tax-free lump sum, great. The other 75% is taxed as income. If you've done too good a job saving, you could push yourself into the higher rate band in retirement and lose half the relief you thought you'd gained.
That's a planning problem, not a pension problem. You control how much you draw down each year. Spread it across tax years, stay within the basic rate band, and you keep the full benefit. That's what a decent financial plan looks like.
You're describing a scenario where you need professional advice and careful annual management just to access your own money efficiently. My I.S.A doesn't need a drawdown strategy. I take what I want, when I want, and pay zero tax on it.
Sure, and you've also got a smaller pot because you missed out on decades of tax relief compounding. A £60,000 pension contribution from a 45% taxpayer only cost £33,000 out of pocket. To get the same invested in an I.S.A, you'd need to find the full £60,000 yourself, except you can't, because the I.S.A limit is only £20,000.
But that £20,000 in a stocks and shares I.S.A grows completely tax-free, no income tax on dividends, no capital gains tax, no tax on withdrawal. It's basically a pension with better terms and no lock-in period.
Better terms? You just described an account with a third of the contribution limit and no tax relief going in. The I.S.A is a good product, I use one myself, but calling it better than a pension is ignoring basic arithmetic.
The arithmetic only works if you value a pound locked away until 57, the same as a pound available today. I don't. Liquidity has value, and for most people under 50, having money they can actually use is worth more than a slightly larger pot they can't touch.
For most people under 50, retirement is the single biggest financial challenge they'll face, and they are dramatically underprepared for it. The discipline of locking money away is a feature, not a bug.
And for most people under 50, the immediate financial challenges, housing, childcare, career breaks, are the ones that actually derail their finances. You can't pay a mortgage deposit with a pension statement.
Which is exactly why I said, if you have spare cash beyond those needs, the pension is the priority. The tax relief is too valuable to leave on the table, especially with the April 5th deadline looming.
And I'd say, make sure your I.S.A is full first, your emergency fund is solid, and then only then consider the pension beyond your employer match. Flexibility protects you from the things you can't predict.
My final point, £60,000 of annual allowance with up to 45% tax relief and potential carry forward is the single best deal in UK personal finance. If you don't use it by April 5th, it's gone forever.
And mine, the best tax wrapper is the one you can actually access when life demands it. Fill your I.S.A first, capture your employer pension match, and never lock away money you might need just because the tax relief looks attractive on a spreadsheet.
The optimizer, the challenger, thank you both. What do you think? Let us know in the comments. Read both articles in full at gilt-edge.uk. Thanks for listening to the debate.